This conference will now be recorded.
It's 6 p.m. on Monday, May the 11th, 2020. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Humphreys County Commission. It's being conducted by electronic means in accordance with Governor Bill Lee's Executive Order number 16. A recording of this meeting can be accessed on May 12th, 2020 at the Humphreys County Government Facebook page. And with that, I'll call the meeting to order and ask Mr. Wagner to lead us in prayer.
If you would, let's take a moment and bow our heads. Gracious and loving Father, we give you thanks for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to serve you, to serve others. We ask that you be with us and give us discernment and judgment that we can better serve all those, Father. We ask that you be with our armed forces wherever they are, and that you be with all that are fighting the virus that is upon us at this time, to be with all of our medical staffs wherever they are, to help them that we can recover from this, Father, and move on in your way. Be with us now to watch over us and guide us, lead us. All these things we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Now, if everybody will stand with me, we'll say our pledge to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag,
of the United States
of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Moving on through the agenda, we'll have the roll call, and we'll begin with Mr. Coleman.
Here.
Mr. Daniel.
Here.
Chris Dillinger.
Here.
Kay Hampton.
here.
Ricky Hooper.
Here.
Ronnie Hughes.
Here.
John Hunt.
Here.
John Hurt.
Here.
Jim Jared.
Here.
Larry Mayberry.
Here.
Marilyn Phillips.
here,
Eddie Rochelle.
Here.
Danny Wagner.
Here.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Johnny Whitfield.
Here.
Very good. Also on the call is County Attorney John Lee Williams, Sheriff Chris Davis. I believe Mr. Rye was going to join us as well. He may not have gotten on, and is also County Clerk Cindy Wilson is recording and taking the minutes of the meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, you have in your packet a copy of the minutes from our last meeting. I assume each of you has had an opportunity to review those minutes. At this time, I'll entertain, without objections, we'll order those approved. Do I hear any objections? Hearing none, so ordered. All right, next item. Report and communication from the county executive. Commissioners, property owners in Humphreys County are receiving by mail reappraisal information, and most are seeing increases in property values. It's causing considerable alarm and some concern. First, our citizens should know that this is not the result of any local effort. The State Division of Property Assessment has reviewed property sales prices and decided to adjust values in Humphreys County. It's important to note that the county is not allowed to gain revenue by this effort. There's a lot of conversation that would have us taking advantage of this situation and gaining more revenue, but that's illegal under the rules that define how reappraisals take place. Example, if the average property value goes up 10% overall, the certified rate provided by the state, tax rate, must go down 10%. unfortunately, for some, this doesn't mean that your taxes don't go up as a result of this reappraisal. Using that 10% example, if your value went up 20%, then the amount you owe will increase roughly 10% in addition to that 10% overall increase. By the same token, if your tax appraisal that you received just represented a 5% increase, you can count on your tax bill actually going down as a result of the reappraisal. It's a wash for the county in any case, and the commission can't use this reappraisal as a way to increase revenue. Having just explained how the reappraisal process affects your property tax bill, I must now inform you that raising taxes to cover the cost of building schools and jails will certainly make tax bills go up in the coming year. We don't know the exact number at this time because we're still waiting on that certified rate from the state, and we should have that before the end of June and the adoption of the budget. We'll be discussing these tax increases during a public hearing being conducted during the June 1st meeting of the Administrative Committee beginning at 6 p.m. The meeting is likely to take place electronically for members of the Administrative Committee, representative of the entire Board of County Commissioners. But I will be unlocking the door for anyone who would like to come in and make a comment to the commission by electronic means. So moving on from that, the next item on the agenda is resolutions. The first of which is a private act abolishment introduced by Senator Kerry Roberts and sponsored in the House of Representatives by Jay Reedy. The General Assembly has approved the abolishment of the Humphreys County Private Act that established the Juvenile Court of Humphreys County at the end of the current term or at such time as there exists a vacancy in that office. Mr. Hughes, your committee addressed this subject. Would you give a report, please?
Yes, we did, and this was unanimously approved to send on to this full body.
Very good. You've heard the report from Mr. Hughes. Is there any comment, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, without objection, we'll move on to the vote, and I'll begin with Mr. Coleman.
Yes.
Mr. Coleman, yes. The action at hand is approval, a ratification of the private act which abolishes that court. So, Mr. Coleman, your vote is yes.
Yes.
Mr. Daniel.
Yes.
Mr. Dillinger.
Yes.
Ms. Hampton.
Yes.
Mr. Hooper.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Hunt.
Yes.
Mr. Hurt.
Yes.
Mr. Jarrett.
Yes.
Mr. Mayberry.
Yes.
Ms. Phillips.
Yes.
Mr. Rochelle.
Yes.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Whitfield.
Yes.
That action is approved. I'll transmit the results to the Secretary of State, making that an official action. So, moving on to Planning Commission appointments. Reappointments of Mr. Raymond Brown, Clarence Duncan, Ray Gentry, Sam Reynolds, and Eddie Rochelle to new terms ending May 31, 2024. Mr. Hughes?
Yes, this was brought before the committee and unanimously approved to send on to this full board.
Heard the report from Mr. Hughes. Is there any comments or questions? Hearing none and without objection, we'll move on to the vote. Mr. Coleman?
Yes, sir.
Daniel?
Yes.
Dillinger?
Yes.
Hampton?
Yes.
Hooper?
Yes.
Hughes?
Yes.
Hunt?
Yes.
Hurt?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Mayberry,
Yes.
Phillips,
Yes.
Rochelle,
Yes.
Wagner,
Yes.
and Whitfield.
Yes.
Very good. That action is approved. Next item, R.J. Young Company lease agreement with the Register of Deeds. It's a copier lease would secure a new copying machine from R.J. Young by lease for at a cost of $114 a month. Mr. Hughes.
Yes, this was brought before the committee, and it was discussed and unanimously approved to send on to this full body.
Heard the report from Mr. Hughes. Is there any question or comment?
Does that also include cost per copy?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Well, hearing none and without objection, we'll move on to the vote. All in favor say yes. Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Daniel?
Yes.
Dillinger?
Yes.
Hampton?
Yes.
Mr. Hooper?
Yes.
Hughes?
Yes.
Hunt?
Yes.
Burt?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Mayberry?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Rochelle?
Yes.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Whitfield?
Yes.
That action is approved. Moving right along. Cruz property purchase. This property adjacent to the proposed site of the new jail is available for sale for $90,000. Purchase would turn us loose on the improvements we need to make before getting started with the jail project. Mr. Hughes.
Yes, this was brought before the committee, discussed and explained, and unanimously approved to send on to this full body.
You've heard the report from Mr. Hughes. Is there any comments or questions? Hearing none and without objection, move on to the vote. Mr. Coleman.
Yes.
Mr. Daniel.
Yes.
Mr. Dillinger.
Yes.
Ms. Hampton.
Yes.
Mr. Hooper.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Hunt.
Yes.
Mr. Hurt.
Yes.
Mr. Jared.
Yes.
Mr. Mayberry.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Phillips.
Yes.
Mr. Rochelle.
Yes.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Whitfield.
Yes.
Action is approved. Move on to the next item. School budget amendments for the current fiscal year and some appropriations. The school board has voted to approve a transfer of $7,013.36 within the consolidated school health program and $13,597.68 in the voluntary pre-K program. They're also receiving a $20,000 grant from the department, through the Department of Health, to buy playground equipment, which would be money in and out, and are appropriating $200,000 in new money to replace roofs. They need a commission approval on these actions. Mr. Hughes.
Yes, this was brought before the committee, and Mr. Rollins explained each and every one of these amendments and appropriations, and it was unanimously approved to send on to this full body.
I've heard the report from Mr. Hughes. Are there any questions, concerns, comments? Hearing none and without objection, we'll move on to the vote. Mr. Coleman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Daniel.
Yes.
Mr. Dillinger.
Yes.
Hampton.
Yes.
Mr. Hooper.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Hunt.
Yes.
Mr. Hurt.
Yes.
Mr. Jared.
Yes.
Mr. Mayberry.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Phillips.
Yes.
Mr. Rochelle,
Yes.
Mr. Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Whitfield.
Yes.
Action is approved. Moving on to the next item, wheel tax adoption, $55 per vehicle. Wheel tax to be applied to select motor vehicles on occasion of each registration or renewal. Based on the current vehicle count, this action will generate $922,735 per year that will be used to fund debt service on a loan needed to cover the $22,200,000 cost of remodeling of McEwen Junior High School and the construction of new McEwen High School. Successful implementation of this will offset the equivalent of a 18-cent property tax increase otherwise planned for the funding of this debt service. Mr. Hughes.
Yes, this was brought before the committee. It was discussed, and on a roll call, there were 8 yeses and 6 noes to move this forward.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Commissioners, today from me you received 2 versions of a resolution that you'll be taking action on. The second, since after the first one was distributed, we discovered that the actual rules allow for us not to implement the issuance of a decal, but rather just mark it on the registration form. And that's apparently the preferred method throughout the local government community, and that's the resolution that I'll be asking you to take action on tonight. So it imposes a $55 wheel tax. And are there any questions or comments or concerns?
Mr. Wallace,
Mr. Rochelle.
if we don't accept this tonight, it all goes to property tax. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. Pending approval of the budget, but this will be the last chance to implement a wheel tax in a timely in a manner that fits within the window of time that we have in anticipation of approval from the USDA to the loan application we've made. In order that loan application the contract of which must be approved by the commission after the application from the USDA has been accepted. But that action will take place likely several months down the road, and it'll be too late to take these tax implementation measures that are going to be needed before the end of the next fiscal year. So in order to do a wheel tax, it must be acted on tonight and again next month, and then depending on the result of these commission's votes, we'll determine what we do going forward from there. But since we are ostensibly planning to accept the conditions of the USDA loan and thereby making ourselves obligated to handle that debt service, we have to have one in place of the other. And in order to do that, it begins with the property tax, which could be reversed will be reversed at some point in time, pending approval of the wheel tax measure. Did that answer your question, Mr. Rochelle?
Well, it just kind of bugs me at this time that we're trying to borrow this much money when we don't know what's in front of us with this COVID deal. And I know it's really affected everybody's business out here and stuff, and I'm just kind of nervous about getting that much money on the table at one time. But we'll
I understand. I think all of us are nervous about the conditions, but if we're to build a jail and a school, move forward with those projects, we've got to do something about the funding. Everyone on the call understands that.
Well, I understand, and I do too. But Wouldn't you agree that this is kind of a bad time to be putting everything all in one basket with jeopardizing the people in the county and stuff, or not?
Mr. Rochelle, this is a decision that you commissioners are going to have to make.
Okay. All right.
I know
Anything
one thing.
else?
I've talked to a lot of people this week about if we
Mr.
go the
Hunt.
42-cent route, all of our heads are going to be cut off. That's a no-no. Is that tax run up there that high? So we have got to go to that wheel tax to eliminate some of this problem.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Anyone else?
We ever passed this, Mr. Whitfield? Have we ever passed a wheel tax in Humphreys County?
There was, to my knowledge, there has never been a wheel tax imposed in Humphreys County. The city of Waverly had a wheel tax for a period of time, but it has since been legislatively eliminated. Anyone else? Hearing nothing else, and without objection, we'll move on to the vote. A yes vote is will enact a $55 wheel tax. Mr. Coleman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Daniel.
Yes.
Mr. Dillinger.
No.
Miss Hampton.
Yes.
Mr. Hooper.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
No.
Mr. Hunt.
Yes.
Mr. Hurt.
Yes.
Mr. Jared.
Yes.
Mr. Mayberry.
Yes.
Ms. Phillips.
Yes.
Mr. Rochelle.
Yes.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Whitfield.
No.
All right, the vote by my count is 11 yeses and 3 noes. So that action is approved and will be back on the agenda for action at the June meeting of the full commission. Next item, notaries. According to Ms. Wilson, we have Patricia Linville, Lisa Jones, and Robert Thomason. Everything appears to be in order. Mr. Hughes.
Yes, this was brought before the committee and unanimously approved to send on to this full body.
Heard the report from Mr. Hughes. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, without objection, we'll move on to the vote. Mr. Coleman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Daniel.
Yes.
Mr. Dillinger.
Yes.
Ms. Hampton.
Yes.
Mr. Hooper.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Hunt.
Yes.
Mr. Hurt.
Yes.
Mr. Jared.
Yes.
Mr. Mayberry.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Phillips.
Yes.
Mr. Rochelle.
Yes.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Whitfield.
Yes.
Action is approved. Any other business? Hearing none.
Ms. Wallace. Ms. Wallace.
Mr. Hughes. Mr. Hughes.
Did I understand you right that the next administrative meeting for June will be done by telephone vote again?
as the executive orders exist today, that will need to be the case. Now, they may change between now and then, and I hope they do. I would love to have that meeting in person, but I don't know that. I'll let you know just as soon as I do know.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Wallace?
Anyone else? Yes.
Mr. Wallace, one more thing. If, just say hypothetically, the commission wanted to kick this school project down the road, is that a possibility that we can tell the people out here, or is it a done deal?
Well, technically you can vote not to fund the wheel tax next month, and then later in the same month at the special call meeting, refuse to ratify the tax rate proposed in the budget, eliminating the cost, the funding mechanism in that manner, and then probably proactively notify the USDA that we're no longer seeking approval for a loan for that project. So that has to be done in June, in the month of June.
Well, I just kind of stand out here on an island, I think, but just kind of wondering what options we had. Okay, that's all I wanted.
Mr. Wallace, one more thing.
Choose.
At the next meeting, when we will be discussing the wheel tax versus property tax, can we take each one of these items, the school by itself, the jail by itself, the fire tax, and also the correction officers by themselves, or are we going to lump them all together?
You've already approved the property tax increase and the appropriation of the funding necessary for all of those measures, Mr. Hughes. But we is historically been the case, we'll open up the discussion for the proposed budget, which all of that resides in now in an approved state. We'll open that up at the next admin committee meeting, and at that time, it's your budget, Mr. Hughes, yours and your 13 peers.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Hearing none, without objection. Is that another comment?
No, I say make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rochelle. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The meeting is adjourned.